Well, hello. The Catholic Church didn't say a peep about pulling something like this off. Now, I don't agree with everything the church says, but they got a lot right. My strong Catholic faith helped me hold it together for all my 93 years of life. God only knows what you all have faith in. Nature, Buddha, those damn phones. Curveballs will be thrown at you right to the end. But having a strong faith in something, it helps you find your way. Now, I'm not sure what the rules are with all this, so I think I'll just keep talking while I can. Now, I know I probably look the same, but things are different. My neck pain is gone. I don't need my hearing aids. And my thoughts are clear. Now, I know I lost a few marbles in the end, but I was aware of a lot that was going on. My thoughts got slippery. And there was still so much I wanted to say. Well, maybe that's why I've been given the chance to be here with you. I don't know where I'd begin. Well, people ask me the same questions throughout my life. How did I do it? How did I raise 7 children? How did Reg and I stay in love for 53 years? And how did we run an inn for 31 years together? And how did I endure once Reg was gone? Oh. Reg and I had such a wonderful life together. And we brought wonderful souls into this world who spread good cheer. You know, Reg was all about teaching our children the power of positive thinking, and it worked. Our kids can raise up a whole room with their good vibes. Reg was so special. You know, the moment I shook his hand, I knew he was the man I would marry. And I dated a lot of fellas. Sometimes 2 in one day. But Reg was the first guy to really catch my fancy. Oh, he was tall and handsome. And he, just dashing. Remember how he looked right at me with those steely green eyes? Oh, he had sharp features and bushy eyebrows, but he had a warmth about him. Reg was a funny, good-looking, smart guy who wasn't full of himself, like a lot of the other guys I dated. And my father, for that matter. You know, the kind of men who like women under their thumb, think we're on this earth to do their bidding. No. Reg had the confidence to let me be my own person. And boy, oh boy, did we have chemistry. We both felt a connection right out of the blocks and never looked back. You know, I first met Reg at Barbara and Buzz Carter's engagement party, and things moved quickly from there. Reg had a steady, but he broke up with her when he met me. And I was home for a Christmas vacation from Smith College, and Reg was home from Dartmouth. And there was a big snowstorm that day. And on his drive from Scarsdale, New York to White Plains, his old clunker of a car broke down. Reg got out and walked the last 7 miles to get to that party. That showed some spunk. We were married a little over a year later. Reg's mother, Marion, wouldn't allow her son to get married in a Catholic church. So there was no church. We got married at my parents' house. on February 26, 1949. 9.5 months later, baby Reg the Third was born. Needless to say, things were working out well. Another son, Crawford, was born 13 months later. Daughter Polly arrived the next year, followed by son McGregor. The kids just kept coming. And by 1965, we had 7 children. And in those days, that's what happened when you were Catholic. I actually gave birth to 9 children. We lost 2 of our boys, Angus and Rodney. And Angus died when he was just about 4 years old of the measles. And Rodney never left the hospital. He died at just 3 months old. There were complications. But I know that I'm going to see our boys and Reg very soon. Before I do, there are things I'd like to explain. I mean, it might be hard to understand the choices we made and how we lived our lives back then. You'd all be surprised how much the world has changed. I mean, we didn't have access to a lot of information. We had a couple newspapers, we had 3 TV channels, and you couldn't watch TV after midnight. And we didn't have shelves full of books on how to raise our kids. And we certainly didn't talk about our feelings. We just did the best we could. And the world, it was so much smaller and simpler back then. Well, maybe I could show you. I mean, so far, it does seem like I'm making the rules with this whole thing. I mean, if you could see what it was like to move from Greenwich, Connecticut, to Etna, New Hampshire, to start a whole new life, things would make so much more sense. Might as well give it a whirl. And if we get back in time, I might look younger and a little more fetching. Can't imagine anything on those darn phones could be more interesting than a dead old lady showing up to share a few thoughts.
Moon's glow in your eyes so bright. Jazz band makes the world take flight.
When you live in Greenwich, Connecticut, you are either hosting or attending a cocktail party on any given weekend. And I don't even know why we call them cocktail parties. We drink, and there's no dinner. We have some appetizers, and they last until well after midnight. We hosted a big party here tonight, and as usual, there was a lot of drinking going on. And after everyone left, Reg sent me upstairs while he cleans the kitchen and whips up a couple scrambolis and toast for a late dinner. Somehow, he can do all of that after a long night of drinking martinis. Reg can drink with the best of them. But I can't really complain. I mean, he gets very opinionated about the politics and what the kids are up to after a few drinks. But he's a lot better than my father, who is a raging drinker, a pain in the rear end for my mother. I don't know why she puts up with him. They have fought about his drinking since the day they got married, and he hasn't slowed down one bit. And my father has a girlfriend on the side, Thelma. She's a gold-digging vixen. And he owns an apartment in New York where they sneak off for their trysts. So Reg may drink too much, but I decided not to fight about it. And for heaven's sakes, Reg doesn't wander. He cooks, cleans, helps take care of the children. Reg didn't even start drinking till he got to the Navy. And when he got back to Dartmouth after the war, he really picked it up in the drinking department. Oh, and now 3 martini lunches are part of the routine at Compton Advertising. I think the commuting into New York, being in the ad business, it's a high-pressure situation for Reg. And when he gets home, having a few more drinks calms his nerves. In his job, he makes good money, but we both worry that the rat race might kill him. His own father, Sweeney, dropped dead of a heart attack on the paddle tennis court at age 58. And we started to talk about making some changes that would help him relax and give him more time to be with the kids. And we love our friends here, but life in Greenwich is overwhelming for all of us. And Reg's mother, she also puts pressure on him to be successful in his work and to step in as the patriarch of their family. Oh, she is high-strung and very demanding. Now, Reg, he's high-strung, but he got his values from his father, who wanted to be sure he wasn't spoiled and knew how to treat all people with kindness. And when Reg was 16, Sweeney encouraged him to get a job as a garbage man. And Marion was horrified because she's a snob. She was afraid her poor dear might be teased by the fellas he worked with or by his friends at school. But Reg believes being a garbage man, best thing that ever happened to him. Despite her constant concern for image and what people think, she does get plenty of things right. Marion makes family get-togethers a priority. And Reg's extended family has gathered for generations for reunions and parties and holidays. They are a strong clan. And I vowed, because I came from a difficult family, I vowed to do it differently with my own family. And when I met Reg, I could tell he was interested in taking part in raising the kids. He's taught me that nothing is more important than family connection. And after we lost our 2 boys, Angus and Rodney, it became clear we needed to be on the same page. So we put our focus on our relationship first because we believe that impacts our kids in positive ways. And connected parents, they give kids a sense of security. Now, I love our children dearly, but it is not good for kids to think they are the center of their parents' lives. Now, still, that doesn't mean Reg doesn't get right in there. On the weekends, he likes to sail, play sports, do work projects with the kids, and they are lucky to have a father who keeps them busy and teaches them skills they'll have for the rest of their lives. They're active. It's terrific. Now that we have teenagers in the house, we give them a lot of responsibilities, such as helping with the younger girls, Winky, Sarah, and Cindy. We make it a team effort in the Pierce household. And ever since those girls were little, we put Polly and McGregor in charge of everything, from diapers to discipline, bath time, bedtime, and entertaining those girls. McGregor teaches them all kinds of sports. Polly reads to them. She plays games with them. And if our kids are going to grow up to be capable adults, they need practice. Learning how to work things out, make decisions, and really get themselves out of a jam without the parents intervening. Well, occasionally we've had to intervene. Oh, there was one time. All the kids in the neighborhood used to take a path through the woods to get to the North Street School. After a few sightings, of this creepy older guy who would leap out onto the path wearing only a polka-dotted bikini or slinky lingerie. The parents decided it was time to take action. Well, Reg made a big joke and had everyone in stitches by nicknaming the guy Bikini Bob. But this was a serious situation. Imagine how much that man was suffering to do something like that. Well, after we reported it to the police, they arrested him. And it turned out that he was a banker in New York and a father of 4 living right here in Fairfield County. Now, people in this community struggle to manage the high pressure. Turned out, Bikini Bob got a warning and was allowed to go right back to his job in New York. And if you ask me, that is Greenwich, Connecticut in a nutshell. In Greenwich, Connecticut. One night, Reg arrived home after getting off the train from New York, and when he got in the house, I could feel his tension all the way down the hall. And our daughter, Winky, had just returned from a camp in New Hampshire at this inn where she learned to ski. And she was only 13. She bounded down the stairs 3 at a time to greet Reg at the door. Dad, the Ashleys are selling the inn, and they think you and Mom should buy it because you would be great innkeepers. Now, I peeked out the door to watch his reaction. He paused, and I thought to myself, this could be just the thing. Because we had visited the inn over the years for Dartmouth reunions and sent our kids to ski camp starting in the 50s when the Keene family owned the place. And I could tell Reg's interest was piqued by the idea because life at work and at home was overwhelming him by that time. He became infuriated by the normal antics of our teenagers and was becoming a tyrant like my father. So I convinced Reg that we should at least pay a visit to the Ashleys, and I couldn't see any harm in having a conversation. So we drove up to Etna, New Hampshire in an absolute blizzard. By the time we arrived at the inn, the electricity was knocked out of the whole neighborhood. The only heat was in 2 fireplaces in that inn. So we get inside, and there are about 20 teenage girls sitting on mattresses they had pulled from the bunk rooms, and they arranged them around this roaring fire in the living room. And they snuggled under these scratchy old wool blankets that looked like they were from the Civil War. So we popped our girls in with that crowd and cozied up by the other fireplace to learn what it is like to be an innkeeper. And it sounded challenging, to say the least. Any rational couple would have turned on their heels and headed right back to Greenwich, Connecticut. But despite how daunting it seemed and the chaos of the storm, somehow Reg and I could imagine being innkeepers. By the end of the night, we decided to go for it. But our parents and our friends down in Greenwich, they didn't understand why we wanted to start a whole new life. My friends thought I was nuttier than a fruitcake. And Reg's mother was horrified at the thought of her son cleaning toilets and making beds for a living. And then the fellas at Compton Advertising insisted Reg was abandoning a brilliant and successful career. But what is success when it eats away at your soul? So in July of 1971, we all headed up to Etna, New Hampshire, and we never looked back, even with 4 kids in college. Winky started high school. Sarah and Cindy entered 3rd and 1st grade, and we named the place Pierce's Inn. Short and sweet. Now, during that first year, Reg fretted about money, and he worked so hard trying to keep the place together that 25 pounds dropped off him in a heartbeat. We were eating healthier food, and he was drinking about a quarter of the booze he drank in Greenwich. But the real difference was that we had time to relax during the week, between those busy weekends. And Reg had always talked about how he wanted to spend more time with the children. So I immediately put him in charge of making breakfast and lunches for the girls while I slept in. And after the girls got on the bus, he brought me breakfast in bed. He did sports with them, helped with homework after school. People were shocked that I expected or allowed Reg to do those tasks, but they were even more shocked that he did them. Now, we had hoped that this move to New Hampshire would help calm Winky down and keep her out of trouble. Winky's always been a highly emotional person. And she was only 5 years old when we lost baby Rodney. And Angus died just months later. Winky, they were best friends. Angus and Winky were partners in our family. And so Winky was inconsolable. And we had to do our best to redirect her, really help all the children. Well, my strong faith helped me manage all those changes. And we thought this inn would be a fresh start for our family to move on. While sitting in St. Denis Church every week brings peace to my heart. I pray every day. And Reg, he was raised a Protestant, rarely went to church. But as the years went on, he grew more interested in what I learned from my faith. And he was particularly interested in the very strict Catholic rules because he thought they'd keep our kids out of trouble. After raising teenagers in the 60s, it became clear that I needed to adapt my idea about some of those rules. Now, I never questioned my faith, but I've changed my opinion about some of those rules, like birth control and premarital sex being sinful. I decided I would embrace the aspects of the church that work for me and let the rest go. And Reg, he follows my lead on these matters. He has a nickname for me. Reg calls me the Great Swami, because whenever we follow what my gut tells me, things usually work out well.
Moon's glow in your eyes so bright. Jazz band makes the world take flight. Every note pure love we hear. Swinging, swinging, the moons and rays, troubles all just fade away. Feel the heartbeat of the night, in your arms we'll be okay. Oh, we'll be okay.
I have had to reevaluate our idea of what working out well looks like. After all these years of running the inn, raising all these kids, it has become clear that we will have to adjust and adapt until we exit this world. Nothing has turned out the way we expected to, yet you might be able to say it's working out. I'm not sure we would have made the move to New Hampshire had we known the kind of hurdles we would face. I mean, sometimes we feel like we're on the brink of disaster and then we land on our feet. Not often in the spot we expected, but that can be fun. We learn to be innkeepers in the trenches. In the beginning, Reg's Dartmouth friends seemed to think Pierce's Inn was a clubhouse for the gang. Don't get me wrong, I get a huge kick out of his friends. Huntley Bennett, Swampy Marsh, and Wemo Phillips, those guys are a hoot. But there were other fellas who showed up for a weekend without a reservation, didn't think they needed to pay. They all had good jobs, for goodness sakes. And we were barely making a dime. I think Reg was being too nice. So I decided to start handing over the bills after breakfast on Sunday morning, and you better believe they paid. We had so many weekends where there were these guests that just showed up without a reservation, and then we had to rent out our daughter's rooms. The dog would sleep on the bottom bunk with one of Reg's classmates, who was drunker than a billy goat, luckily, and his third wife would sleep on the top bunk with all of the cats. I mean, some of what goes on here is not to be believed. At one point, we were losing so much money trying to keep this place going that it looked like we'd have to sell it and move. So we made some changes. I mean, we made it through the energy crisis by the skin of our teeth. So I took over the business part, and Reg got a second job in a local advertising agency. So he would work all week and then jump back into innkeeping on the weekend. Well, then the inn biz picked up a little bit, and I needed my head housekeeper and Mr. Fix-It back at home full time. Well, instead of hiring a new cook, we decided we could save money if I did the cooking. And I wasn't sure I had it in me, but, by that time, I had figured out how to do a lot of things I had no idea before. So I became the cook. And when the odds are against you, you adapt, you adjust, you figure it out. We joke that Reg holds this place together with good vibes and duct tape. Whenever I have my doubts, he reminds me of all the ways we've turned things around in our lives and here at the inn. We know how to lift each other up. And of course, there's times we have to drag each other along. And a lot of that dragging is around money. And when it comes to money, I do the dragging because Reg is a cheapskate. We had this weekend that was very profitable. It was really a 2-week stretch where we made a whole lot of money. And every time something ended, Reg would get out his adding machine and he'd get the checks and all the cash and he'd count it and then he'd recount it and take it to the bank. Oh, he'd get so excited. Well, after this little stretch of a lot of profit, I woke up with one of my brainstorms and I announced it was time to trade in and buy a new Garland stove because the one in the kitchen was 40 years old and it was going to cost almost as much as he had just deposited in the bank. And the moment I said it, Reg's arms went in the air, his eyes got wide. He looked like he was apoplectic. Now, we can't take money to the grave, so I like to put it right back into the inn, put it to good use. Well, by lunchtime, Reg said he could feel the money slipping through his fingers. But when that new stove arrived, you better believe he was pleased. He said the great Swami always knows the next key move. And we had to make some changes on the kind of guests we hosted. The atrocious behavior of the drunk Dartmouth boys and girls, men and women, we have to call them that now. Well, they would sneak into our rooms, and without paying the bills, it was repulsive what Reg had to clean up after they left. Men and women, my hat. Well, weddings were also something that was very tricky for us because there's always an incident. And luckily, I'm good in a crisis because Reg almost collapses. There was this one time, our dog took a bite out of a 4-tiered wedding cake. Now, luckily, our guests were all out on the front lawn, watching the sunset, enjoying the view, while our teenage daughter, Sarah, calmly cut off the section of the cake where the dog had bitten, patched it up with some extra frosting left by the baker, and then she shimmied it into a corner. And no one noticed. Oh, but she grew up, she got on with her life, and that's how it is. You know, she was busy with her own life, but she helped us avoid a lot of disasters at Pierce's Inn. And now that all our kids are grown, they still call us when they have a problem. And Reg becomes consumed with how he can help them with their problem. I mean, he loses sleep, he thinks about it all day. I sleep like a lake, and I don't think another thing about their problems till they call back. Oh, I have noticed that Reg is starting to share a little bit more of what's in his heart, especially when he works on a project with one of the kids. And our son Crawford moved to the area, and he is helping Reg fix Pierce's Inn. And Crawford has encouraged him to be more open about his emotions. Crawford was a real hippie, and he tells Reg he loves him out loud. And when they hug, he insists they hug with both arms, heart to heart. And it's nice having someone else nudge the old fella along. I'm sure he wouldn't have gone in that direction if we stayed in Greenwich. We are relieved, grateful that we don't deal with some of the things that our friends down there are dealing with. I mean, their kids are joining the Moonies and other strange cults. A couple kids have been accused of rape, even murder. Even though we escaped that kind of thing, my parents' situation has crept north for years after we left. My father had the gall to promote his lady friend Thelma from secretary to business partner, and then marry her immediately after my mother died. And 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will to read, "Treat my children as if they never existed." Wow. Oh, I was getting into the car at the Hanover Co-op, and I'm about to get my car, and some legal processor approaches me to get my signature on the changes of the will. Right there in the Co-op parking lot, I learned that my father left Thelma everything. Our home, all of his money, my mother's personal belongings, and even our family portraits and photographs. I decided I needed to move on. I needed to accept the situation and put my focus on our family and Pierce's Inn. And luckily, Pierce's Inn keeps us very busy these days. And it's almost too busy at our age. We're getting older. And when I mentioned to Reg that we should take a vacation during mud season, he thought we should wait till we were on more solid financial ground. I said, Reg, that is for the birds. We've been working our tails off for years, and solid ground is a myth. Well, it took one more April of Reg pumping water out of the dining room every single time it rained, and he declared a vacation was in order. You know, our friends ask us about our retirement plan, and we don't have one. People also wonder how we get along since we spend every day together. And of course we have conflict, but we never go to bed angry. And most of our arguments are about politics and what time we should put the potatoes in the oven. And occasionally about the kids. Oh. I think it's good for our kids to know that we can disagree and still love one another. And you know what? I think it's good for them to hear us admit when we're wrong and know that we're able to move on. You know, I talk a lot about moving on, but it's not always easy for me. I wasn't home when Angus died. Reg and I were actually on our way back from a wedding in New York City when he passed away. And sometimes I wonder if things would have been different if we hadn't gone to the wedding or if we had gotten home sooner. We debated about not going, but the bride was the daughter of a very important client. And it seemed so critical at the time for Reg's career to attend the wedding. Now, Angus had been sick with the measles, but the doctor had thought he was on the mend. And we left the wedding before they served dinner, and when we got back to Greenwich, we were famished. So we decided to stop by the yacht club for a quick bite. And they were closing, but the cook offered to make us a couple sandwiches. And when the kitchen phone rang, my stomach dropped because I knew that Angus had died. I'm sure the neighbors knew we'd stopped there and told the police. The measles vaccine came out the year after Angus died. He just missed it. So our family has had our share of difficulties. But now Reg and I, we spend the month of April in Florida where we rest and revive ourselves. And the kids and grandkids come down for a week and we have a big family time together. And when we're alone, we play tennis and read and do our taxes. Sometimes I take long walks on the beach listening to the waves. And I cry for long stretches of those walks. And I think all that crying and walking helps soothe my soul.
Dancing in the moonlight under city stars. We've got that rhythm, don't need no bars. Your laughter's like a melody, sweet and fine. Honey in my heart and you're mine, oh mine. Step into a groove that we both know. Feet light as feathers moving to and fro. Your eyes, they sparkle brighter than the wine. Honey in my heart, love like yours is divine. Oh, We've got the beat in a jazzy way. Two hearts syncopated every single day. We'll sway to the music, never drift apart.
Cindy recently asked me if Reg and I still have sex. I told her, of course we do. Not the kind we had in our 20s, but we certainly still have sex. You know, young people don't want to think about their parents being intimate, let alone in their 70s, but it is good for a relationship, and it's fun. Sometimes you don't think you want to have sex, but you can steer your mind, and your body follows, and once you get going, you never regret it. You know, there are other things that make our relationship strong. I value my independence because Reg and I spend every single day together. So I play tennis and bridge with Marge and Harriet and Mary, and I go to the hairdresser where I enjoy hours of my own thoughts. Reg, however, isn't that interested in time alone. And now that the kids are grown, Reg comes with me to the co-op because he thinks I take too long and chat too much. I still chat while he takes that list and gets the shopping done. And these days, even now, Reg has decided that he wants to come to church with me. And Father Kelleher has asked Reg to collect the offering and bring up communion. I mean, on many Sundays, old Reg, he hobbles up the aisle on his bum knee, standing out like a sore thumb in his LL Bean chamois shirt and his mango yellow corduroys. His Protestant mother, she must roll in her grave knowing her son is at a Catholic church. Perfect. I do think that church helps calm Reg down. I mean, he's an even more friendly and patient innkeeper who gives people a wonderful experience or makes them think they're having a wonderful experience. He can take them to the back bunk room, and he gets back there and he stretches out his long arm as if he's casting a spell, and somehow the guests, they ooh and they ah as he presents 10 bunk beds with those scratchy old Civil War blankets still in the mix. Oh, and it's in this cramped, drafty room with an uneven floor. They must think they're back at summer camp. And then when we have events during the spring, one time Reg couldn't pump the water out of the dining room as fast as it was flooding. So he went to the barn, scrapped together some wooden planks to put around the dining room for guests to walk to their tables. He put plants all around the dining room, real ones, fake ones. And as the guests came into the dining room, he gave his signature arm wave and said, "Welcome to the rainforest." They squealed with delight, booked a party for the next year. Cindy nicknamed him Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I don't even know who that person is. But apparently in some movie, he waves his hand and gets people right on his program, just the way Reg does. Well, after every event, Reg is exhausted, and he comes back to the office, plops down in his chair, and says, "We made it, Nance." As if, like, the whole thing could have gone to hell in a handbasket. And we have catastrophes, and we always get through, but he is surprised every single time. I mean, when he takes each event and each task so seriously, and when Cindy comes down to help him make beds, their banter is a riot. Oh, Reg will say, okay, Cindy, we're going to conquer these beds, and then we're going to forge on to the back rooms and win the battle. Whatever it takes to get those beds made. I don't say a thing, but it's absolutely ridiculous. And Reg, he is in charge of the towels and the sheets. And the ranking system for his collection of towels is very specific and known only to him. Oh, he keeps stashes and stacks of towels all around the inn, some older than our children. You know, he's got to be at the ready. You never know if, there might be the end of the world, or J.C. Penney might stop selling towels. I mean, some of his towels are older than our children. It's ridiculous. I do know if you stay in the back room, you're going to get one of the Margies. And those are marginal towels with the frayed edges. Then there are the Fooey's. Oh, the Fooey's are the rattiest towels in the whole collection. And he only pulls those out when he's absolutely desperate or when the family visits. I have a rule when the family visits. After every meal, the kitchen needs to be relatively clean so the new cook can start fresh. And recently at one of our gatherings, Reg and I were having an early lunch in the kitchen. And I asked some of the kids in earshot who left the half-eaten pot of oatmeal on that stove. Well, they all blamed Crawford, who admitted it was his. Then he thought he could maybe leave it around for an afternoon snack. Crawford's girlfriends and wives have let Mr. Handsome get away with way too much. It's a disservice to the rest of us. I couldn't help myself. I said, Crawford Pierce, no one cares how good you are in bed. Clean the oatmeal pot. Reg just about spit his lunch out when I said that. And I don't usually make fun of our kids or say such naughty things, but that was bad form. And Crawford even chuckled while he cleaned the oatmeal pot. I sometimes wonder if I've been harder on our girls than I have the boys. My father was cruel to my brothers. He emasculated them. So maybe I've overcorrected and let the boys get with a little bit more. But I was exhausted. And I handed the baton to Reg any chance I got. And I'm lucky I could always lean on him. Oh, I do worry about his health, though. A few years ago, we were driving down to Florida, and Reg collapsed in a hotel bathroom. And I thought it was the end. But after a night in the hospital and a prescription for blood thinners, we were on our way. And it's hard to know if we should stop innkeeping so he can take it easy, or if not having something to do would kill him. Some of our friends who are retired are really down in the dumps. They don't have purpose, too much time on their hands. And watching that, Reg and I decided that we want to work and run that inn until one of us drops dead on the kitchen floor. We love innkeeping. There's so many interesting people that come to the inn. Even when the furnace is broken and the pipes are frozen and there's leaks in the roof, we feel blessed. And so what if Reg is a high-strung cheapskate who drinks a few too many martinis? We all have our flaws, right? And you know what? Reg Pierce finds the good in people and the positives in life every single day. And we should all strive for that. His Dartmouth friends said he was a connector all the way back in the 40s. And when Marion dropped him off at Dartmouth, she met his roommate, Ed Addix, who was doing sit-ups on the floor without a shirt on. And Marion immediately disliked Ed because she thought it was disrespectful to not have a shirt on, and because he was Jewish. And Reg was so embarrassed that he dismissed her, but he noticed that Ed was mistreated around campus. In those days, men who were black or Jewish were openly disrespected and excluded at Dartmouth College. When the Psi U guys came around to ask Reg if he wanted to join their fraternity, he said yes, as long as they invited his roommate Ed. When they said no, he didn't accept. Well, you better believe those guys changed their mind. Ed and Reg became Psi U brothers together. And after a couple years at Dartmouth, a lot of those guys joined the Navy when World War II was in full swing. While Reg was training in the Philippines, they were ordered into their PT boats to head to Japan to fight. Right before they took off, word got in that the war was over. Can you imagine gearing up mentally for battle and then learning that we've already won the war? It's amazing. And after the war, all the Navy ships came back to San Diego, and over the course of many weeks, these ships docked on this giant pier in San Diego. And thousands of men poured off the ships every day, so it was filled to the brim. Strangely enough, Reg's old friends, Wemo Phillips and Swampy Marsh, just happened to run into each other on that giant pier. Sailors didn't know if their friends had made it or not. These guys were so amazed that they decided to pull over to the side in case another person they know showed up. Well, sure enough, off in the distance, they spotted a tall, gangly guy with a bit of a hobble. And when he got close enough, and they were sure it was their old friend Reg Pierce, they both burst into tears. And they cried and laughed at the incredible odds of running into each other, and grateful to be alive. Every time I think of that story, it touches my heart.
On a day that's wrapped in summer sunshine, lost my blues, found a way to unwind. Every corner of this city's glowing. Got that jazzy brass, the trumpets flowing. City lights begin their nightly dance. Life feels light like a sweet romance. Every step's a rhythm, never missing. Folks are swaying.
In August 2003, Reg was scheduled to have polyps removed, but they had to take him off his blood thinners for the procedure. He ended up being hospitalized with pneumonia, so they rushed to get him back on the blood thinner, but it was too late. He ended up having a stroke, followed by another stroke, a big stroke. And Reg and I, we had talked about how neither one of us wanted any heroic measures or to live in a compromised state, and it was clear in the end. So we gathered the family over the next few days, all our children and grandchildren, to say goodbye. And we took him off life support on a Thursday morning. But he lived on. And at 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday, everyone was asleep. very quiet, very rare for the Pierce family. Some were asleep in the waiting room, some in his room. And the nurse came in, and she said he was about to go. So we woke everybody up, and with our hands on his heart, Reg took his final breath. I think he chose a quiet moment and departed this world, not wanting to be a bother. Well, we spent some time together, and then the kids all went home to sleep for just a couple hours to get Pierce's Inn ready to host a rehearsal dinner that night. And they all pitched in, to clean and shop and cook. Oh, they had a mission to complete, just the way their father would have wanted. They were well occupied rather than wallowing in their sadness. This is interesting to me. About a year before Reg and I retired, he planned, scheduled, figured out the meals for a rehearsal dinner on August 8th, and he died on that exact day. Here's some more fascinating timing. Our son Reg helped me make calls to all our friends and family to share the sad news. And when he called Ed Addix, Reg's roommate from Dartmouth, he reached his son, who reported that his father had passed away the day before on August 8th. Then, 3 years later, one of our dearest friends, Bob Kirk, died on August 8th. Something about all that happening on the same date feels mysterious. And it's somehow comforting to me. You know, after all those years of leaning on one another, I felt like I lost half myself when Reg died. I was unmoored, actually. Had to pull myself together. And luckily, we had family next door. About a year and a half before, Reg had convinced me that we should retire, sell the inn to our daughter Cindy and her husband Bruce, and move next door to the chalet. I wasn't quite ready because I liked being a busy innkeeper. But he was certain we had a very small window to keep the inn going. And the fact that our daughter and her husband wanted to take it over, fully aware of the hard work and financial strain they were stepping into, seemed like a chance we needed to grab before they changed their mind. Cindy and Bruce, they took over the inn with 3 children under 5 years old. And we knew that Cindy and Bruce were well suited for innkeeping. Cindy's high energy keeps things moving. Oh, you might know her. Tell you what, she's lucky. She's got a solid man like Bruce to keep her grounded. He is a calm, friendly soul and a terrific cook. And Bruce figured out how to fix and repair things at Pierce's Inn just the way Reg did back in the day. We handed over some great biz to the new innkeepers. The silent meditation retreats were the most interesting. Oh my goodness, they don't eat sugar, and they don't eat cheese or meat. They ask for vegan meals. And that's different than vegetarian. They don't even eat quiche. And the participants, they sit on their mats absolutely still for 30 to 60 minutes at a time, not saying a thing, many times all weekend on these mats. And apparently, that helps them resolve their issues in life. And at meals, they sit still, they sit alone, and they stare ahead, eating very slowly. We were informed they were being mindful, paying attention to each bite. It looked excruciating. And a couple times during the weekend, they get out on the lawn to walk mindfully. They step into the grass, feeling it touch their feet, breathing. Oh. And our neighbors call and ask why our guests look like zombies. Now that Cindy's running the joint, she takes part in all that mindfulness. Maybe she's resolving her issues. I had thought that the innkeepers might need our help learning the ropes. But Reg, he seemed to think they could figure it out on their own. He thought it was bad form for me to be yelling suggestions from our porch. Well, now that Reg is gone, Bruce invites me over to help serve breakfast on the weekends. You know, he understands that I might feel lonely. You know, living alone, it can be hard. You know, I have a lot more time to think of the past, including the hard times. I now understand that it must have been traumatic for our children when Angus died, especially for Reggie and Crawford. Reggie had gone up to check on Angus and he found he wasn't breathing. His throat had swollen shut. But the babysitter, she took immediate action, and the police and the ambulance arrived, but both boys actually witnessed them trying to revive Angus while we were on our way home. And the next day was very difficult. The children sensed something was happening and they trickled into our room, and Reg was paralyzed with horror, really. So I knew I had to be the one to speak. And I told the children that Angus had died, and then I announced that we had a new baby coming in November. And I think I put the good news with the horrible news to distract myself and to focus on something positive in hopes that it would alleviate some of their pain. You know, in those days, we didn't talk about our emotions the way people do now. I mean, Reg and I were consumed with our own sadness, devastated to lose Angus just 5 months after Rodney died. You know, a family cannot prepare to deal with such sorrow. I couldn't get out of bed a lot of mornings during that first year. Reg and I tried to convince ourselves to not feel regret about going to that wedding. But now I do feel regret. And some parents turn against each other when they lose a child. But Reg and I turned toward one another. We didn't blame each other, and we privately shared our pain. But we didn't do that for our children. And I wish I had understood the need to balance moving on with tending our hearts. Despite everything that happened, our children have thrived. We had always hoped that our kids would end up happily married the way we were, have someone to lean on the way we did. They all got married, and a few got divorced. Divorce can be a blessing. Whether they remarried or not, they all ended up happy. And after Polly got divorced, her girlfriend set her up on a date with a really nice guy. But it turned out that he spent 6 months a year with his parents at a nudist colony. Can you imagine? Well, she wasn't interested. And luckily, Polly is an independent person who's just fine on her own. Polly inspired me. I decided I'm just fine on my own, too. Well, my widow friends warned me, that the single old fellas were waiting to pounce. Well, I never felt burdened taking care of Reg during his last 10 years. But there is not a chance in hell that I'd sign up to marry some other old guy with ailments. 2 weeks after Reg died, the vultures started circling. I got a letter, more like a resume, actually, from an old widower friend of ours who invited me to come visit him for a few days. And he mentioned in the letter that he needed to be hooked up to oxygen 3 times a day. And added that he was otherwise mobile. I hadn't been on a date for 53 years, over 53 years, and I was certainly not going to start with a guy on oxygen. Reg lived to be 79 years old, and we were happily married for 53 years. We were blessed with wonderful children and grandchildren. Reg almost lived long enough to meet our first great-granddaughter, Lily. Reg used to give a toast at Thanksgiving, reminding us that family is the fabric of this great nation. He was so proud of all of his children and grandchildren. And even though he didn't say the word love out loud very often, they all felt his love. Reg and I said, "I love you" every single night to one another before we went to sleep. Those were the last words he said to me before he had a stroke. I'll carry those words in my heart till the day I die.
Underneath the stars, where the night begins to play, a twinkle in your eyes sweeps all my cares away. The melody of love whispering through the breeze. In this moonlit serenade we find a sweet release. Your laughter's like a trumpet, bright, brassy, and bold, dancing through the starlight in stories yet untold. Compared to a symphony, this love's a perfect riff. Even the moonlight knows our rhythm can't be missed. Let's sway beneath the moon and let our hearts take flight. In this upbeat jazz number, love feels so right. With every note and phrase we find out.
Almost every single day, I receive an email offering penis enlargement. I write them back. And I tell them I'm an old woman who doesn't even have a penis. You know, the kids say those emails are just like junk mail. In all my years, not once has something shown up in the mailbox offering penis enlargement. You know, the banks, they also write me every day asking me to verify my personal information. But I can't find my account numbers because Cindy took my checkbook and my computer. My girls seem to think I can't handle my money. Well, Cindy could take some lessons from her brothers. My nice boys would never take my checkbook or my computer. You know, McGregor is such a good fella. When we talk, he listens to my worries and he understands my situation. And when Crawford visits, we talk all day. I mean, sometimes I have to take a little nap in the middle, and then I wake up and we keep talking for hours. He needs to get his feelings out. Reg always said that the kids like to come get advice from the great Swami. Someone told me I can't say that name anymore. I can't remember why. I am 93 years old. I'll say whatever the hell I want. Well, when Reggie visits, he helps me with the computer. He doesn't do the Facebooks himself, but he got me an account. Reggie is a computer genius, but he can't figure out how to get me back on the Facebooks. But it doesn't matter because Cindy took that computer. Cindy brought me some special CBD cream. Apparently, they make it out of marijuana. And I asked Cindy if the druggies hanging around on Main Street might think I'm part of the scene. Well, she said they take out the ingredients that make people get loopy. Well, I think that's probably a good idea because I wouldn't want to get kicked out of my activities if they think I'm all hopped up on drugs. Oh, even though Cindy's bossy, she does a lot for me. You know, the other inmates at Wheelock Terrace are jealous. It's like having my own salon. She does my nails, she gives me massages, and she plucks my chin hairs. I mean, what would my mother say if she saw me walking down the hallway with a beard? You know, I haven't heard from my mother in some time. I'd like to send her an email. Oh, but Cindy took the computer. I am madder than a wet hen about that. You know, I told Cindy that some of my advisors who live at Wheelock Terrace suggested that I sue her for taking the computer. Well, apparently we have the same lawyer, Eric Jansen, and Cindy insisted that she would call him the next day and he'd have a lawsuit going immediately. And you know, I wanted to call myself, but someone took my phone. because I call everyone too much, sometimes in the middle of the night, I guess. But I'm very confused. I don't know who's going to pick me up from this hotel. I'm all packed up. I'm ready to go. But they don't respond. You know, I can't remember a lot of things these days. They say this is not a hotel and that it's my new home, Wheelock Terrace. But I can't remember if any of my 9 children have visited me. Sarah visits me. Oh, Sarah has 5 children who are all grown and out in the world. Sarah's just like me with all her kids. She even looks like me. When she visits, she brings me bouquets of flowers that don't need any water. I don't know how she does it. Sometimes I get these people around here to call Bruce on the phone. And I tell him that I have a numb arm, which gets Bruce moving. A numb arm could be a stroke, you know. And we always have such a nice time together at the emergency room. One time, Bruce left work to take me to the ER. Turned out I had food poisoning. One of my friends at Briggs had brought a leftover chicken burrito to put in my pocketbook while we played, to take it home for dinner. Well, we played bridge for hours, and the doctor said it was a no-no for the chicken burrito to sit in the pocketbook all afternoon. Well, I was back at bridge the next day. Little tired, but they expect me to be there to run the bridge game, the senior center. You know, I was the oldest employee in the town of Hanover for years. But I guess being in your 90s is too old for a job. Well, the kids thought I should give up driving after the car incident. Couldn't quite remember where I parked. But the nice police officer sat with me for hours while another police officer searched the whole town of Hanover to find my car. They were more than happy to do that. My birthday was something very special. We gathered for my birthday and Thanksgiving on the same day at Pierce's Inn. 44 family members gathered, and apparently they said some nice things, but I didn't listen to a bit of it. Don't pay any attention to all that talk. Well, almost all of our 21 grandchildren were there. 8 of our great-grandkids, and one of those babies' names is Reginald Franklin Pierce V, named after his father, who's named after my son Reg, who's named after Reg, who's named after his father Sweeney, whose real name is Reg. I held that little baby in my arms. Oh. Polly visits. Yes. I like it when Polly visits because it's very relaxing. She takes me out to lunch, which is a real treat. And Polly is so patient and calm and not in a rush like some of my other children. Well, I told Polly about the time my father hired a chorus of singers to drive up from New York to New Hampshire to sing the announcement that he would exclude his children in the will. Polly seemed to think there was just one man that met me at the co-op, but it was actually a chorus of 12 singers who were dressed in long white robes, and they had big angel wings that drooped all the way down to their ankles on their backs. And the parking lot was very crowded, and they stood on the edge and they sang about how my father would treat my children as if they never existed. Polly insisted there was no chorus, but I remember it like it was yesterday. You know, I see my father every day at lunch in the dining room at Wheelock Terrace. He sits all alone, reading his newspaper, and he doesn't talk to a soul. What a bastard. You know, I told Cindy that our girls should all feel so thankful that they're able to speak their minds. I told her I should have kicked my father in the balls for the way he treated my mother. Cindy almost fell off her stool when I said that. She thinks my difficult father inspired me to raise daughters to be strong, independent women, and that I raised sons who chose strong, independent women, and one son, Crawford, who chose 4 strong, independent women. That made me laugh. But I also feel so sad about our precious son, Angus, who died at just about 3 years old of the measles. We couldn't park at our house. We had to park 3 houses away because there were so many emergency vehicles on the street. And I will never forget the expression on the fireman's face when he came out holding Angus under a blanket. My memory fails me so often these days. But those memories are so vivid in my mind. When Winky visits, we have some big cries when we talk about Angus. Oh, she takes me to the movies, and we cook, and we dance together. Winky and I can feel Angus and Rodney and Reg watching over our whole family. I think the good Lord was watching over me when he nudged Reg to walk through that storm to get to the party where we met. And I think it was meant to be that we had 9 children: Reggie, Crawford, Polly, McGregor, Winky, Sarah, Cindy, Angus, and Rodney. Reg and I had such a wonderful life together. And even on the days when we never left the Pierce's Inn kitchen, he made it feel like a great adventure. The moment I shook his hand, I knew he was the one.